Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bibliophila, where I discuss books that inspire us, enrich our lives and broaden our mental horizon. Let's begin today's episode with a review of yet another book. Today, I'll be talking about a book, Alms in the Name of a Blind Horse by Gurdial Singh. Gurdial Singh is one of the most celebrated writers in Punjabi literature and portrayed the plight of the marginalized sections of different social classes through his writings. Alms in the Name of a Blind Horse is a cultural text, a contemporary classic, which was first written in Punjabi and then translated into English by Rana Nayar. It is set around the 1960s when feudalism was being transformed into capitalism in rural Punjab, which brought about several socio-economic changes. It derives its title from an ancient myth associated with the churning of the great milk ocean, in which Lord Vishnu was less than fair in his dispensation of the nectar of immortality to the Asuras, who were considered to be the ancestors of modern-day Dalits. Gurdial Singh tries to say that just like the Asuras had to depend on the arbitrary dispensation of the gods to get their share of the nectar of immortality, modern-day Dalits have to depend on the mercy of their overlords to get their means of survival. Gurdial Singh portrays the sufferings of the working class and the plight of the marginalized sections of social classes, especially the Dalits. The question, why are stories only about kings and princes, was raised by Tindi in his novel Parsa. He was the first Punjabi writer to raise the issue of the Dalits by portraying one as the hero in his novel The Last Flicker. This book was set around the time period of the 1960s when feudalism was being transformed into capitalism in rural Punjab. As a result, the market value of the land had increased tremendously to provide the capitalists ample amount of resources to build factories and industries, demolishing the feudal system in the villages. As a result, Dharma and his family were evicted from their native land where they had lived for several years. An oral agreement in front of the village panchayat was made between Dharma and Vadhava, the owner of the land, which confirmed the fact that Dharma was the owner of a piece of the land measuring a canal and a half. Vadhava chased away Dharma and his family from their land by demolishing their coterie and reduced them to a state of homelessness. This aroused consciousness among the other characters and manifested the lifelong exploitation of the Dalits. On the other hand, Melu, who was a migrant rickshaw puller in the city, was struggling to find means of survival. He was wasting himself away by drinking obnoxiously. He even stole the money saved by his wife to feed his addiction, to relieve the stress of pulling rickshaw day and night. He and his friends continuously curse their existence and complain of being treated like dogs, and they think that death is the only means of escape from their lifelong torture. Melu's friends remind him that even after living in the city for 7 years, Melu hadn't gained anything. He was just wasting himself away by pulling the rickshaw day and night, transporting people from one place to another. Melu's father, who lived in the village, was oblivious to the fact that his son was struggling to live in the city. He thought that migration to the city had brought prosperity to his son and dreamed of moving there himself one day in the future to get away from the tyranny of the Jats. Melu's brother-in-law once transported his sister and her daughters to the city to meet Melu. He was moved by his plight. The moment this thought hit him, he felt a strange dread run through him. When he looked ahead, he saw a bizarre spectacle before his eyes. All the rickshaws scattered all around were lying upside down in a heap. 3 or 4 tongas were also turned on their heads. On the other side of the iron gates, all he could see were policemen milling about. The rickshaw and tonga wallas, stuffed into 2 police trucks, were still shouting slogans. Though he looked very hard, he couldn't spot Melu among them. Somewhat confused, he walked across to the same tonga walla he had just left, who was busy rubbing his knees, and asked, "Why, Bhai Singha, you'd know whether Melu was also in this procession?" "Oh, brother of mine, I haven't cracked Melu's knuckles that I should know. There are 20 such Melus going about," feeling exasperated. The Tongawala once again spoke in the same coarse manner. Then, tightening the circingle over the horse, he asked, "If I am not wrong, are you asking about that Melu who lives in the basti opposite the mill?" "Ha, he is my brother-in-law. My elder sister is married to him. Why couldn't you find someone else? Did you go all the 12 miles with a lantern to look for someone like him?" Unmindful of the charged atmosphere all around, the Tongawala spoke with dripping sarcasm. "It'd have been much better had you pushed your sister into a well." When Bahu's brother maintained a studied silence, refusing to respond to him, the Tongawala changed his tune. Lowering his voice, he said, "Don't be angry with me, O brother of mine. God has given us such twisted tongues. What can we do? Why talk of your brother-in-law alone? Everyone is like that. All of them take drugs, even opium. They give themselves injections too. Let them be. Except a good deed, they do everything they shouldn't. Your Melu is not so pious that he won't follow the footsteps of these elephantine monsters. It's not that he is to be blamed in any way. It's vagabonds like me who have given him false notions about himself. I told him several times over, 'Bhai, if you want to save yourself, then go back to your village. Why are you wasting away here? Life in these towns is like a well. If you don't try and find out about a man buried underneath, he won't even sink. Both the worlds have abandoned us. We have no past and no future. We are like the lame tail of the camel. What can any bloody fool take away from us? Beyond this, there is no other pit in which we may fall. Our people always look down upon this profession of tonga driving. But this is what we are condemned to do now." Gurdial Singh criticizes the fact that the capitalists often resort to abusive and torturous means even today to uproot the native villagers from their land so that they could pollute it by building factories and industries, demolishing the feudal system in the villages. Gurdial Singh even says that the capitalists often taunt the villagers by showing them some money which would sustain them for a while. People like Vadhava succumb to the bait of the capitalists and sell their lands to the factory owners, in this case a 16-acre land, to gain some money to relieve them from their economic distress. Gurdial Singh also criticizes the myth that a capitalistic society brings prosperity to the Dalits and saves them from caste discrimination, poverty and oppression, because in reality it transfers them from one state of oppression to another. I sincerely hope that you have found this analysis of the book Alms in the Name of a Blind Horse by Gurdial Singh interesting. If you have, please do not forget to share and subscribe to my channel Bibliophila. I'll be back again with an analysis of yet another book. Till then, keep reading.